Hello, nerds. Nerds for humanity. I have a special guest on today. I've got Joby Bernstein, who is running to represent California's 16th district, which is where I'm streaming from right now. So he might be my congressman. Welcome to the show, Joby, and hello, nerds.
Thanks, Tom. I'm excited to be here.
Where are you joining from?
I'm in Palo Alto.
I
So
love
it's
it.
a pretty morning here today before the rain's supposed to come later.
Love it, love it. Yeah, I'm in Duvnik, so I'm probably not too far from wherever you
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Love it.
Love it.
Well, tell me what have you been doing before deciding to run for Congress? That's an unusual career move. What were you doing prior to that?
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely a little bit different than most people in the race. I have a career in business and investing and in climate policy. Um, right now, I'm actually a student at Stanford Business School and also finishing up my master's in climate science. Um, Before that, I spent 6 years largely focused on stuff related to climate change, trying to solve climate change. The first job I ever had was an outdoors guide. I am enthralled with the wilderness ever since the first time went on a backpacking trip in the Sequoias in California 15
Huh.
years ago. Uh, I just have a deep passion for the outdoors, but I've really watched the devastating effects that climate change has had on this state over the last 15 years, whether it's the prettiest grove of trees in the redwoods succumb to wildfires, seeing the most pristine alpine lakes up by Lake Tahoe become overcome by algal blooms. It's very evident that's having a devastating impact, but it's so much more than the wilderness. Like we are seeing it in society. We can't go outside in the summers because of wildfire smoke, and we are seeing thousand-year floods destroy our homes every other year, or having when I go and talk to children in schools, people questioning if we can live on this planet in the next 30 years. So I was like, okay, I'm going to commit my career to climate. I've worked in environmentalism and done trail work, done environmental science research. I have started 2 corporate sustainability programs, worked in climate investing at the institutional level, the growth equity level, and in climate investing and venture capital. Um, Helped advise startups, try to start some of my own. Worked in climate policy in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Utah, and have really come to the realization that we have 5 to 10 years to really chart a new course for this country, and it needs to happen today. This district leads. We have the most climate startups, the best climate researchers, my favorite climate activists, and it's time for us to have a leader who is really focused on ensuring that we are creating a future that works for everyone for the next 30 years. A future that we protect our environment, we ensure that we are educating our talent to protect our children's future, and we ensure that we're welcoming talent from abroad and keeping talent here to really ensure that we can keep our neighbors here and not have them get kicked out. So running on a platform that's focused on climate, education, and immigration, and I bring that business and investing and environmentalism and activism background. That's really a fresh perspective and a next generation of leadership.
Wow, you might be the greenest candidate running in this race. It sounds
Yes,
like, given
yes.
your passion and your background and education, and priorities. How would you how would you assess how we've been doing around climate in the last few years? I think a lot of people look at the Inflation Reduction Act as a big leap forward. Um, I've done some volunteer work for environmental organizations around electrifying communities and things like that. What's your assessment? How would you grade the country in terms of our actions in the last few years?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. I'd say first, I'd grade this district probably close to an A. Um, what has taken place in Silicon Valley, like we've seen amazing innovation come out. We've also had this amazing implementation as well, with the number of homes that have heat pumps, solar panels, efficiency upgrades,
Hmm.
even electric vehicles, which aren't the biggest thing you can do, but it makes a difference. Um, it would be awesome if we could flex what we've done in this district in the rest of the country, because even though we are crushing it here, we need Nevada and Utah to like also be doing the same. I'd say overall, the IRA is so passed in 2022, um, alongside like Inflation Reduction Act, but also with the Infrastructure Act and the
Mm-hmm.
CHIPS Act. And together that have sort of put nearly $400 billion to be invested in creating a sustainable future. The problem is it's not like that money just like goes out the door right away. We actually need individuals, consumers, and
Yeah.
businesses to actually implement and like start new projects to actually create the infrastructure needed for us to get to that future. So, for instance, homeowners need to actually actively go out and install heat pumps or buy an electric vehicle to get the tax credit to get that money. For corporations, there's huge amounts of transfer pay or like valuable tax credits they can get by building a solar farm, a wind farm, carbon capture, nuclear, like you name it. There are the list of things that the IRA provides for is innumerable. But we actually need businesses, individuals to go out there and do it. And so I think right now there's still a good amount of uncertainty of what can individuals do? How do they actually get the tax credits? How can they get like $14,000 in their bank? Like the way that I think about it, the IRA basically gave every single American citizen this new bank account that the government owns that
Mm.
about $14,000 in it for individuals to figure out how to spend it. And so I wish we could do a better job of really with like climate education and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to go and use the money. And same like for corporations as well. There's still, even though businesses are pretty like are smart about this, there's still a lot of questions about the law and how they can actually receive the benefits. And so we have this amazing piece of legislation, the best piece of climate legislation this country has ever seen. And yet, over the next 10 years, people are really going to need to get up to speed at how to ensure we can actually get those $400 billion that is promised to us.
Yeah. Do you think there was was there another way that we could have deployed that money to improve kind of our chances further, or do you think like, wow, this is the best way to do it? You make the incentives available, and you try and get people to know about them and take action, or is there a
Yeah, yeah.
different approach?
Yeah, I'd say two things. One is we're lucky that law got passed. Like it is surprising of getting $400 billion out the door in that short a time and three very impressive acts. And we do owe thanks to Anna Eshoo, who is our like current congresswoman here, who has helped with that process and has been a leader there. I'd say one thing that I've, as someone who has like a background in like tax policy and also in like climate business, when law was written, like I think congressmen and congresswomen don't always know the difference between like a tax deduction and a tax credit, but that is like extremely important if it actually is going to work or not work. And so
Hmm.
parts of the law were changed at last minute that have actually made it like what I was describing earlier, have made it tougher to be implemented because it takes further steps or more time. And sometimes I wish we had like economists writing the law at the end to actually people who know how it can get done instead of politicians who are like, oh, if it comes out of like our a tax credit, it's not as bad as like individual spending, where it's like it's really just the same thing. But okay, so yeah, regardless about that, I think that's been like a little bit frustrating with it. I think the second part I always like to highlight is we have the money, but the only way to actually solve the current crisis we're in is to ensure that we can actually build the infrastructure necessary to electrify the economy and to make our grid and power sources more renewable. The problem is right now is permitting reform is very necessary. If you want to build a solar plant right now in this country, once you've actually designed it, set it up, gotten local approval, it takes an average of 4.2 years to have the grid. So these like public utility commissions or regional transmission organizations actually agree to install it. And that like 4 years is wild. That's like, imagine if you're a business person getting everything approved, being good to go, and then someone's like, sorry, you now have to wait 4 years. And the issue is that the current queue to be adding new projects onto the grid, it's 93% renewable. So it is not new coal plants that are coming on. It's not new natural gas plants. It is largely wind, solar, geothermal, battery projects. And what we're seeing is 4/5 of those projects are dropping out because no one can afford to wait 4 years. So we are losing, like, so many developers and businesses and individuals want to launch these products and create a greener future, and they are just continually getting stuck. So when people say that things aren't happening in Congress, the really sad part is that if you looked at renewable, like, financing and renewable development and actually the real builders who are trying to, like, change this country, they're really struggling the most to get things done right now. And that's where I would really like to see more progress. I think the IRA was left short on kind of really seeing permitting reform that hasn't really been fixed in 30 years, and it's not designed for the current system we have.
Yeah, almost feels like we need a warp speed for some of these renewable energy
Yeah,
projects.
it worked with the COVID vaccine, and I wish people saw that the environmental crisis we're in right now is the same crisis.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could probably would affect more people in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, we
Uh,
see, like, even just in, like, heat, like, 12,000 Americans die each year due to climate-related heat deaths. But, like, we
mm,
don't hear about it in the news every day. It's just, like, it's harder to attribute, and that's why, like, this issue is one that it's, like, so tough because you don't get to see the impacts every single day. It's not right in front of us. Some people think, "Oh, it's, like, a really hot day out." Like, a heat wave comes and people are like, "Oh, the climate is changing." But actually, it's probably just weather event. It's not oftentimes actually climate. And so it's
mhm.
like when you really look at the science and you're looking to the numbers and you're seeing the toll it's having on humans, like, on citizens and neighbors, like, in this country, in this district already, it's scary. And I wish we could just see those facts in that dashboard in front of everyone every single day. Because if you don't see that, acute death in the news, it's just hard for us to really be invested in a problem.
We talked a little bit about solar. I remember, I don't know if it's still being debated, but I remember some people arguing that incentives to install solar on residential were um, unfair to lower income families because, well, if you can afford to install the panels and wait the multiple years for the payoff, you're going to pay less for your energy, and then the power company will have to make up its fixed costs elsewhere and raise the rates on the people who don't have solar, and therefore this is a kind of regressive policy. What's your take on that argument?
Yeah. It's a really nuanced argument. It's a great question. It's a really nuanced argument, and nuanced topic. So basically, California was one of the original leaders here that actually incentivized solar to be installed. And they originally had this policy: if you put solar panels on your roof, um, and you could connect it to the grid, connect it to your power line that's coming into now of your house. If the current energy use, like, the current energy that was created from your solar panels was more than your house needed, you could sell it back to the grid at the price that you were going to have to pay for it. And this was a huge benefit because you think, like, most, like, power plants, coal plants, they actually have to sell it to the grid at, like, half the cost because the utility wants to make a lot of money off it. But there was this amazing program at first. You could sell it back at full price. So
Mm,
individuals could make a ton of money. The problem is that utilities were losing a lot of money. It was breaking their system. While they can turn on and off a coal plant anytime, they can't control when you're going to take more energy from your house or less energy. So it basically stripped utilities off the ability to better control the grid and better understand their pricing, and if they could stay profitable. And, like, yes, I don't want PG&E to be the most profitable company in California, but I do want to make sure they don't go bankrupt again. And so it caused a lot of issues. The California Public Utility Commission has basically continued to come out with different rules, to ensure that we can price it more fairly. The recent one is called NEM 3.0. It probably went a little bit too far at kind of punishing solar owners. So there's probably some room to come back. But it is a very fair argument that the original rules that were kind of passed in California and started in many places in this country likely put a lot of strain on utilities, caused utilities to have to find higher sources of power at times of high demand. And those higher sources of power, those higher cost sources of power, like a natural gas peaker plant, those costs were distributed towards people who don't have solar panels and were likely lower income, more in need, already have a high burden of their energy costs. And so it's a problem. But I would say the state has also led at providing community solar projects, ensuring that lower income communities actually can have better access to solar resources, receive higher tax credits, uh, ensure that they have insurance and maintenance and everything's kind of checked off. And so we are seeing a change where there are so many programs available to all Californians that it really isn't regressive anymore. But it is important to have policymakers who really think through these topics, because way too often climate policy can actually hurt those it's designed to help. And we just need thoughtful leaders in office who understand this to make sure we don't do that again.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a complex topic. And, for what it's worth, if there were proposals to heavily subsidize lower income communities to have access to renewable energy, that then lowers their out of pocket costs, so it helps with income inequality, and then of course reduces carbon emissions, like, I'd be very okay with that. I think
Yeah,
that's like a win-win there.
yeah,
um
yeah. And like most people don't realize that, you know, the amount that an individual pays for their energy bills for for wealthy parts of this district, they're paying like 0.1% of their bills on electricity, versus for individuals
mhm,
who are lower socioeconomic status are paying up to 10%. Like that's
yeah,
huge. So already it's a regressive tax. So we need to be very thoughtful about ensuring that everyone should be paying a fair amount like for their electricity. And it's just troubling when you look at the numbers today. It's not fair.
yeah. Yeah, and that's even more exasperated in colder climates. Like, I was just in New Hampshire for a few weeks, and
Yeah.
people are talking about heating bills eating up a large percentage of their disposable or their total income.
Yeah.
And I wish there were a way to help them, like, get geothermal or heat pumps or
Yeah,
something
they
that,
need heat pumps.
yeah, yeah.
They New Hampshire was built a lot of the original colonies, the way that their natural gas pipelines were built are just make it really costly to run today. And they
Mhm.
sort of have these stranded assets where like people need to move on to the future of heating. But they've currently been stuck and either have to pay a ton for natural gas or for bunker oil, other methods that are just terrible for the environment and also terrible for their pocketbooks.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we could talk about climate forever. Let me just
Yeah.
ask one last question. What's your view on nuclear?
Yeah, nuclear, I think, is needs to be part of a strategy for our future. Um, I'd say we've seen there's a lot of new technology coming with nuclear. A lot of like SMRs, which are basically small modular reactors. And the idea is that instead of having to spend 20 billion, we could spend like $1 billion and kind of create a nuclear facility that works, that's safe, it's reliable and sustainable. We're so far not seeing the economics actually match up to the promise. So the the U.S. actually did uh, uh, install in South Carolina. We actually first time in like decades last year put in a new nuclear facility, and it went like 3 times over budget. And like three times. That is huge. It
Mm,
was like, oh, it's gonna cost us $3 billion. Oh, sorry, it's 13 billion. We've really struggled getting the cost of nuclear down over time. A little bit part of that is due to regulation, but a lot of it is that we're not seeing significant like cost improvements and efficiency and productivity. If you look at solar, like solar becomes 10% cheaper every single year.
mhm.
Batteries are becoming over 10% more efficient every year. We are dropping down the cost curve in a lot of those technologies. And to me, if you look out in the future, like that's where the opportunities really are. And because once batteries are half the price they are today in 5 years, and solar is 30% cheaper to manufacture and install, uh, they will not be even like they'll be blowing nuclear out of the water by then. So nuclear, like I think it's important to keep our nuclear facilities up to date. Um, in action right now, because if we took nuclear off the grid, it's going to go to coal and natural gas. We don't have enough solar right now to fill in the spots. But I think we're going to see in a decade that's not going to be the case anymore. And so I don't think nuclear really represents a large part of our future, but it's an important part of today.
Oh, that's interesting because I remember, I guess it was like a year or two ago, reading Bill Gates's climate book, and I think one of his arguments was, "Hey, you have to have nuclear because you're not going to be able to kind of go carbon neutral or carbon zero without an all of the above approach." It sounds like, are you more bullish on other renewable sources, kind of making up that ground?
Yeah. I would never support removing nuclear today. If there's facilities that work, that are safe, it makes sense to keep it. It's a great source of baseload power that can keep the grid reliable. But I think the science that we're seeing right now, like, yes, wind and solar, those are old technologies. They're improving a ton though every single year. We're seeing a lot of exciting stuff coming out in geothermal, in batteries, and many other sources of energy that are going to revolutionize the grid in the future. It is most evident here at Stanford right now, just seeing that innovation. So I'd say anyone who wants to start reading up of what's coming, it's exciting.
Cool, cool. What have you seen lately that is what was most exciting to you that you're like, whoa, that's amazing?
Yeah, I'd say a few things around hydrogen is definitely an area where I don't think our future economy won't be driven by hydrogen, but there are some things where hydrogen is necessary. So long haul trucking, you just really can't make batteries big enough to send a truck across the country. But
Hmm.
we're seeing plants be able to make hydrogen efficiently, safely, easily, in a very green fashion that can be installed into trucks easily and get things done. So opportunity there. Um, Seeing a lot of fascinating things around solar panel recycling to battery recycling. The technology is moving very fast there at being able to ensure that we can take batteries that no longer work and have degraded and put them into new batteries, take materials, clean them, put into new batteries very fast. Um, Seeing exciting things around the future of heat, ways that we can basically, instead of heat spaces, just heat people instead, and have spotlights on individuals that heat them up, that are personalized, can be controlled by an app on your phone, uh, and really make it 90% more efficient and many times more comfortable. So it's impressive seeing what's coming, and I hope everyone can get as excited as me, because the future is going to be really cool when it comes to the future of our energy use, where we get our energy from, and just how it's going to improve our economy.
Love it. Well, this will maybe help us segue into some foreign policy stuff in that I do not hold this position, but I have the unfortunate habit of debating people on Twitter over politics. And one thing that I hear coming up from opponents to climate investment is, "Oh, if you're for solar, you're for China.
Mhm.
That you're trying to put money into the hands of Chinese businesses." And I think the other argument is batteries are very damaging to the environment. So drill baby drill is the usually the end point of their argument.
Yeah.
What's your take on our potential dependence on other countries, especially China, for some of these key materials or capabilities?
Yeah. It's such an important question. Right now, it's a real problem. We are heavily reliant on China and many other nations for our green energy supply chain. If you look at most batteries in electric vehicles, 80 to 90% of the materials come from China and are put together in China. Um, I don't think there's really any other industries I can think of that are as reliant on China and as reliant on Asia to ensure that we get the products we need. During COVID, it caused a real slowdown. We basically set back our infrastructure and our ability to install clean energy by over a year, due to issues on the supply chain. So I think it's something that we need to be actively paying attention to. The sad part is, I think the US has chosen the wrong path. And by choosing to put in tariffs on Chinese green energy products, which I think is the wrong way to go. I think instead we need to be incentivizing US manufacturing and US production. But I want to make sure at the end of the day that whether it's from the US or from China, the cost of installing a new green power plant, a solar wind farm is way cheaper than natural gas or coal. And if you're going to put tariffs on Chinese goods, that's not really going to be the case. So I don't believe in kind of putting on more tariffs or duties. I think the US has this kind of issue where we have led in the innovation like no one else. Like climate tech is not a big thing in Asia, in Europe. They are trying, but like the amount of startups innovation we're seeing come out of like the 3 miles around me right now is probably more impressive than the rest of the planet, and like the rest of all other countries combined. So US crushes it in innovation, and we also crush it in implementation as well. If you look at how many homes are installing solar, buying electric vehicles, weatherizing, getting these new innovative first of a kind plants, starting with sustainable aviation fuel, getting geothermal up, like US is doing a fantastic job. The problem is the middle right now is we don't have the manufacturing here. And so we do need to bring that back in order to ensure that we can have a full supply chain in this country. Yes, we'll always need to be sourcing from abroad, and I do believe in free trade, but I think we are at this huge geopolitical risk that individuals aren't enough like concerned about enough right now. Seeing that 90% of core materials in many parts are coming from abroad, we need to actively be incentivizing manufacturing in this country, bring those jobs back, and that would really provide more safety, more resilience, and a hell of a lot more jobs that are high-paying manufacturing jobs that used to be the core of this district. It's time to bring those back again, ensure that we can really protect our supply chain and protect our clean energy future.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of trade-off there around having more vertical integration in the US versus cost reduction and making technology more accessible. Like, if you said to me, hey, there's a way for us to lower the cost of solar so that more houses in the district could have it, but you've got to buy it from an overseas supplier like China that either has lower labor costs or maybe their government is subsidizing it. I don't know what
Mhm.
they're doing. Or there's a way to buy solar panels that are completely manufactured and sourced here to ensure continuity of access, but it'll cost twice as much. I don't know what I would say because I'm like, well, gee, people need help now, and we need to start reducing our footprint now. But on the other hand, like, I don't love being dependent on any other country. What,
Yeah.
what? How do you think about that trade-off?
Yeah, it's a balance. I'd say it's not this two-time difference we're seeing. It costs a lot of money to ship these panels
Mm.
across the ocean, and shipping right now is like relatively more expensive than it has been. Um, so it is probably closer. I haven't looked at the numbers recently. It's probably closer to like a 10% difference. I
Oh,
think
okay.
most consumers would be like, oh, I'm okay with that. For businesses, that margin matters. And so
Yeah.
that's why putting in a 10% tax incentive on, production tax credit or investment tax credit, to have people buy from American companies, like isn't an outrageous idea because it just gives us a chance to make it equal. I still think consumers should buy. Like if China's producing better solar panels, then yeah, let's go for it. Like that's okay. But I think having the option, ability to actually invest in a American manufacturing where we actually, can compete is worthwhile. Like, yes, China is investing a ton of government dollars and subsidizing their solar, and subsidizing wind turbines, and they're basically kind of have these countervailing duties that help basically dump it on the market. I think we should also be helping. Like China is the largest emitter of carbon dioxide. It
Mm.
would be great if they could be installing those panels in their country too, and if the price in their country went up as well. So like helping other countries realize that how easy it is to install and like set up these technologies would make a difference. But I'd say it's a balance today. It's not as big of a difference as some people make it out to be. and a little bit of government intervention at sort of fixing that market failure would go a long way.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize the U.S. kind of produced products would only be maybe 10% or 20% more. That seems very acceptable as a premium to kind of protect the local domestic kind of supply. I guess is the gap because it sounds like it's because of the shipping costs that hits the Chinese suppliers.
Yeah, it's both shipping. It is also that solar panels degrade over time. So when you put in a solar panel, its first day, it might, it's like 100% efficient, and that's going to come down to 80% over time. The US tech is actually better there. We're able to actually keep efficiency actually higher. So, like, yes, day one might be different, but project developers are pretty smart and they realize that, oh, it's going to be more efficient over time. You make more money. And if the panel is going to last for 10 to 15 years, you'll see a longer term benefit.
The total cost of ownership argument. Got
Yes.
you. Yeah. I love it. Love it. Well, we only have maybe 5-10 minutes left, and I realize we basically spent the whole time talking about
Yeah.
climate. Awesome. So thank you for that. What a privilege to be able to speak with someone who thinks about this stuff all day long. Let's switch gears and talk about two hot topics. So we
Yeah.
can't end the interview without talking about immigration and Middle East. Maybe we'll start with immigration. It seems like President Biden has been kind of evolving his position on the border. I think it started out with, I'm definitely not going to do what Trump did. And then it became, it's not a crisis. And now it is a crisis. Please give me the power to shut the border down. So he's kind of played the field a little bit on this one. What's your take on the southern border? Is that a problem, or what should be done about it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would talk about climate all day. I do want people to know you can always go to jobyforcongress.com and see all my other issues. Immigration is a key part of my platform as well. Southern border right now is clearly a crisis. We had 302,000 apprehensions on the border in December. The numbers are still up really high right now. 302,000, that's just like a number. Imagine the population of Woodside and Atherton being arrested by border police every single day on the border. Like, we only have the police force here to be able to arrest probably like 100 people per day. It is unimaginable to think the amount of people who are crossing and seeking help, asylum seekers, refugees, people looking to come here for the American dream. I'd say we need to fix the system, and there's a few things that need to happen first. The immigration courts. It is a broken process right now. We need to heavily invest in the courts and the permitting, and like getting actually things done. For every decision that gets approved right now, we're seeing 9 more come in. So the backlog is just growing. It takes years for them to process, and it's speeding up too fast that it's kind of uncontrollable right now. So fixing that is extremely important. I think we need to ensure that communities that are bearing the brunt of immigrants coming in are getting more support. FEMA does provide a lot of assistance, but I do think more is needed. It looks very like, yes, we can sit here in Palo Alto and say everyone deserves to be American, but if you're not kind of living the environment on the border right now, you realize that we do need more resources, and those communities need them now. That is extremely important. I'd say also one thing that people don't fully recognize is, so I worked in DC on the Hill in 2013. That was the first time when it used to be, oh, immigrants are coming from Mexico, and now they're coming from the Northern Triangle of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And yeah, we need to actually, the problem's changing. And today it's not talked about enough. The problem's actually changing again. We're seeing on the border a lot of immigrants coming from India and China who are crossing the border. And that number has skyrocketed in the past few years as they fly to countries from India and China that there's no visa, and then make the dangerous path up to the border. And to me, it's more of a pretty easy reason to understand why that's happening, Right now, if you have a PhD in India and you want to try to apply for a green card to come here, the waiting time is 134 years. It doesn't work. If you are very talented from abroad, no matter who you are, what degree you have, what you can contribute to our society, you are getting blocked. And so I think the real reform needs to come on the legal side. The US right now has 9 million unfilled jobs. That is like pre-COVID, we used to be at like 3 or 4 million. We are many folds higher from where we should be in this country. And I think the fact that Americans can't fill these jobs, aren't willing to fill these jobs, some of them are high skilled where we don't have the technology, others are low skilled. We need to have a lot of reform there and increase the amount of work visas that are available. The system that was designed in 1986 doesn't work today anymore. It largely prevents people from more populous countries from being able to immigrate here. And therefore, the waiting lists for individuals in India and China and large countries in Europe are 20 plus years. And that just doesn't work if you want to come here and be American. And therefore, I think that's causing more of the illegal immigration issues. So a lot of my platform is really focused on the legal side, increasing work visas, making DACA permanent, ensuring that people who come here to study here can also stay here. Some of my closest friends from Dartmouth or from Stanford, come from abroad, come here. They want to start a business here. They want to have a family here, be American, invest in America, contribute to our community. And yet after 2 years, we say, I'm sorry, we're going to kick you out, even though they are contributing so much. And it makes absolutely zero sense to me. So I really wish we could have comprehensive immigration reform that really address the bipartisan topics on the legal side that could take the stress off of the border. A lot of opportunity there. We've seen a lot of bipartisan issues get passed, but in certain houses, but not get reconciled. And so I really think we need smart people in Congress there today who know things that can get done, that would make a difference, and could fix both sides of immigration. And it's time to do that now.
Well, Joby, we've talked about climate, immigration. Now we're going to talk about another complex issue, the Middle East.
Yeah.
What should be the U.S.'s position on the conflict between Israel and Gaza going forward?
Yeah. It's definitely a very tough situation. It's a very sad situation we're in as well. I think I'm the only Jewish person who's running in this race. I have a ton of friends in Israel. I've invested in many Israeli businesses before, spent a lot of time in Israel. So I have ties to that country, but I do think I'm someone as well who every single night in my prayers, the loss of innocent life in Gaza continually tugs at my conscience. It is no mother, no child should be killed for no reason. The amount of lack of food, water, shelter, medicine that we're seeing in Gaza is unbearable to watch. And so I can only pray for a faster solution and peace there as soon as possible. I think the US's job is really to ensure that Israeli authorities and Palestinian authorities can come together as soon as possible. And whether it's working with Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Egypt and other important players in the area to ensure that the parties can meet, work together, and decide on a solution that works for both. Both sides are going to need to give stuff up. I'm a believer in a two-state solution, but at the end of the day, I don't want to be too prescriptive in that I really think that the parties on the ground there are the ones who can control if peace is possible or not. And I think the US's job should be to getting that discourse to happen as soon as possible is extremely important. I think that requires getting the hostages back ASAP. I think it requires ensuring that, Hamas promises to stop sending rockets and ensures that Israel promises to stop invading more of Gaza territory. There's definitely a need for more humanitarian aid ASAP. I think the U.S. can play a role in ensuring that aid is brought and distributed in a fair way and is not ending up in Hamas tunnels. that we're seeing it end up there today. So it's a very nuanced issue. I think my two top priorities are ensuring the safe return of the hostages, and then also ensuring that more aid and humanitarian assistance is given to Gaza. I think the U.S. plays a role at getting the parties to the table, um, and then ensuring that there's no wider escalation with Houthis, Hezbollah, and I really think the root of the problem here um, is Iran, and we need to be focusing a lot more there. I do wish that part was in the news a little bit more. Um, there's dangerous players in that part of the world, and it is going to become a larger and larger role. And it's going to continue to remain in the news, and we need to be very thoughtful about our actions, really ensuring that people across the region can feel safe and a sense of belonging. Because I think what we experience in this country, I just wish that every country in the Middle East had that same ability of democracy, freedom of speech, representation, and especially not worrying about food, water, and medicine. So lots of room for improvement. It is a challenging situation. It is one that that tugs at me every single day, and it's extremely hard to watch the news, and actually see what's going on the ground. But it's important, and an issue that I can only pray and hope that has a fast resolution, and one where the U.S. can contribute to ensuring that parties come to an agreement as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's clearly a difficult issue that's been kind of, it's not a new issue, and it's been befuddling lots of well-intentioned people for decades or even more. I want to share my views on this and then kind of get your response.
Yeah.
It's an issue that I struggle with because absolutely I support a two-state solution. Absolutely, I want to see a safe, thriving Israel as well as a safe, thriving state of Palestine, living peacefully side by side. And I also think what happened on October 7th was horrific, absolutely horrific. And so initially, when Israel responded and, President Biden was, very clearly in support of that, I was like, this is a little bit of justice, that you can't just turn the other cheek when over 1,000 people get murdered in a day. If that happened here, like, we wouldn't just kind of wait.
Yeah.
But that's 3 months ago, and it's hard to watch the daily videos of entire neighborhoods being leveled. And it's not clear to me that all of the occupants of those buildings were part of the Hamas organization. And I know that some of my tax dollars are providing the armaments being used every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the ceasefire camp now, which is like, okay, like, clearly there was a response. It was a very, very fierce response. And now it's time to give peace a chance. Now, if Hamas breaks the ceasefire, then we have to respond again and then stop. And that you just keep hoping that the repeated pattern will, provide incentives for Hamas to not do this anymore. But I'm not sure I'm okay with, like, indefinite bombing of Gaza until Hamas finally, says uncle, because it seems like they're comfortable hanging around in those tunnels for a while.
Yeah. It's such a challenging topic. It's just sad that Hamas chooses their battlefield as deciding to play from hospitals, play in mosques, hide in residential buildings. It is evident that like we would never do that. We would never hide among our own citizens and kind of put warfare into people's homes, into their lives. So every time I feel like Israel tries to warn areas, try something, there's not really good solutions. I think it's like clear that Hamas has genocidal ambitions for Israelis and for Jewish people. Um, they plan to continue fighting as long as possible. And like, I just know if we had those terrorists who lived, down in San Jose and were trying to send rockets at us every single day, I think our response would be very similar to Israel's. I think when it comes, like, in December, we had a ceasefire that Hamas broke.
Mm-hmm.
And it is good. They continue to break ceasefires again and again. I wish it was possible to like, and I think we're coming close to hopefully seeing if we can get humanitarian pauses, and ensuring that, like, we're getting closer to solution. But I just don't have given up on trusting Hamas. Like, it's happened a dozen times when they've continued to break promises and continue to send rockets over. The last time I was in Israel, Hamas was sending rockets like into Tel Aviv. We had to hide in a shelter. It is not fun. It's scary. For American, it is freaking scary. Israelis like, oh, we're used to this. This is fine. I was like scared for my life. Like, it is petrifying knowing that 30 miles away, someone is shooting bombs at you and continuing to do it year after year, day after day. US taxpayer dollars, like since 2016, when Obama signs like the MOU for support, most of that money like is really going to protecting like the Iron Dome, and providing support for Israel defense. The weapons that Israel buys from American multinational defense companies that are then being used in war, those largely aren't funded by taxpayer dollars. That's Israeli money. Those significant, all of most taxpayer dollars actually going to protecting Israel and like their like support there. But yeah, I can only pray that like peace is found as soon as possible, because like it is time to get rid of Hamas. I don't know the best way to do it. I don't trust myself as knowing the solution, um, and I hope that a solution can be found as soon as possible to protect civilian lives, because it's absolutely terrible, like the current state that's happening right now.
Well, Joby, clearly, if you make it to Congress, there'll be hard uh, decisions to make, and I'm glad that you're a thoughtful guy and trying your best to kind of unpack these complicated issues. And appreciate you coming on to the show. Anything that I didn't ask you, or anything that you wanted to share with folks watching this, that you want to put out there now?
Yeah. I know we didn't cover all forms of topics. I think I always like to explain to people that like climate policy is housing policy, climate policy is transportation policy, climate policy is health policy. When I um, talk to, like a waiters in a restaurant downtown, and she has to commute from Tracy every single day. Like, yes, like she composts, she recycles, she tries not to fly, but her commute is terrible for the environment because she can't afford housing here. When it comes to, you know, suffering from, climate disasters or like having housing issues, we have like a housing policy problem. The health effects we're seeing from climate are innumerable as well. So, like, as the climate candidate, I want to be clear that I'm very thoughtful about the other issues. My platform addresses them in depth. I am the person who has probably the most policy kind of ideas and topics written up on my website. I invite you to go and learn more at jobyforcongress.com. If you want to help out, you can volunteer, grab a yard sign. Donations always make a difference. But I appreciate you listening to all of this. It's such an important race. This is the first time we've seen an open seat here in 30 years. And I really think it's time for fresh perspective, next gen leadership, and someone who brings new policy ideas, has the business experience, deep ties to this community, as well as ties across the aisle, who really wants to represent us, and fight for change and fight for this district. And that's my promise and commitment to you.
Well, I appreciate that. I just noticed in the chat that one of our channel members had a question, so I'm going to ask you it real
Okay,
quick
cool.
before we wrap up. A lot of our audience is big supporters of basic income. Would love to kind of hear your thoughts on UBI.
Yeah, so part of my platform is something called a carbon dividend. which is basically putting a price on carbon dioxide. Too often, Republicans have called this a carbon tax. I hate when people say carbon tax. So I'm not going to say that word again. Basically, what we need right now is to price carbon effectively. And what that would entail is ensuring along every stage of the production, we put a price on the damage it was causing to society and factor that into the cost. That money is then collected by the government, but it is then immediately distributed back to all Americans in an equal way. So it's a revenue neutral program where the money comes in from it's being collected as emissions are emitted along the process, and then it is redistributed back to all Americans. Right now in this country, the wealthiest 10% of Americans emit 40% of carbon dioxide. So it's really the wealthy that are causing such a large share of the problem. And we need to ensure that they're being taxed effectively because of that. So creating this carbon dividend system, it's basically a carbon cashback system. Every American gets a check or money in their bank account that looks very similar to UBI. And this process would ensure that over 80% of Americans were getting more money back than they were paying in. So it would be a system that ensures that we can cut emissions 50%. It is recommended by 90% of economists. Climate scientists agree. It's easier to implement. Europe does it with a value-added tax. We can do the same thing here. You can add on a carbon border adjustment, and then you ensure that 80% of people get a check in the mail every single month or into their bank account. And it could make a real difference very fast. So I think that's kind of my form of UBI. It would ensure that 80% of Americans are getting more money back than they're paying in. It would fix a large share of our climate problems, and it would do it in a way that is market-based. It doesn't drastically have the government pick winners and losers. So it's good policy. It works for most Americans. It's agreed on by economists and climate scientists, and it's time to get it done.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like a green UBI.
Yeah,
You kind of kill two birds with one stone. I love it.
exactly.
Well, thanks for coming on, Joby.
Yes,
Best
it's
of luck
awesome.
to you
Thank you,
in
Tom.
the race. It's I hope people give you a close look because I can tell you're very passionate and thoughtful, and you're trying to help. And those are all great boxes to tick.
Yes, exactly. We are 30 days away on the final sprint. It is amazing watching the momentum this campaign's getting. So excited to watch it keep growing the next 30 days, and we're going to get there.
All
So
right.
very optimistic.
Thanks, Joby. Take care,
Thanks,
buddy.
Tom. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
All right. Joby Bernstein, I like this guy. Let me know in the chat or if you're on replay in the comments what you think about him. And we're gonna do an of the people review of him that you can do as well and share your thoughts there. So we're gonna go to ofthepeople.us. And then, oops, I'm going to log in. Hold on. Okay. Now I'm logged in. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen of thepeople.us. I'm going to filter by CA-16 right here so I can see all of the folks competing with Joby. And I'm going to give him a review that you can write a review as well and help other people learn more about him. Let's see. Joby strikes me as the most climate first candidate with deep policy positions. Especially cool to me is his support of a carbon dividend. I also like how he's highly educated and very thoughtful about nuanced issues. Bonus points for being an avid hiker and backpacker. Submit. All right. So that's on there now. And you can see here, like there's other candidates that you can take a look at. So yeah, go ahead and check out Joby and the other CA-16 candidates on ofthepeople.us. Vaughn asks, hey, who are you voting for? Well, it is my district, and there are 10 candidates. Let me give you like a Nerds for Humanity read on who's out there. And if you know anyone that lives in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, Peninsula, feel free to share this with them. So we'll sort by all-time most approval votes. So Evan Lowe. Evan is super well known, very likable. I think he has got good experience, may not be as specific in his policy kind of platform as I like. But I'm a nerd, kind of policy nerd. But so Evan, good. Rishi, I supported last time. And I love the fact that he's been running like for multiple cycles, even when there was a 30-year incumbent. And he's pretty experienced and kind of, for Medicare for all and other policy things that I care about. So I kind of like Rishi as well. And as you can see, I'm sharing my of the people logged in view. I've given him the green checkout. So I approval voted Evan and Rishi. So Rishi's very strong. I think he's strongest because he has a combo of business experience and government experience. And, I also have a soft spot for people who put in the time. Greg is probably like the tech version of Joby is that Joby is for climate. So Greg is super into technology and innovation and AI, and he's a big kind of proponent for innovation. Also a very likable guy. We have a lot of likable people running in this race. We're a very lucky district. Very Northern California vibe. Ahmed, I haven't met, but I will have him on the show. So I'll tell you what I think of him. Joby, I just wrote a review. Julie, I haven't met, but she is also coming on the show. And then I've invited Sam, Licardo, Joe Samitian, Peter Otaki, and Peter Dixon onto the show. They've not responded, so I can't really comment on them, but I'm hoping that they do come onto the show for a conversation as well. And in fact, I might try and put together, maybe in a couple weeks, a panel discussion with all of our former Nerds for Humanity California 16 candidates, and maybe even some that haven't been on the show, and have them all together at one time to talk about these issues. And I don't know if I'd call it a debate, but it would be a discussion where we could talk about hard issues, where I imagine there would be a diversity of perspectives on things. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So to answer your question, Vaughn, right now, if I had to vote today, I could only consider the people that I've talked to, because there's other people that they're coming on to the show, like Julie, that I think is interesting, but I just haven't met her yet. But of the people I've talked to so far, I think Joby's pretty strong. So I'm not sure I'm going to vote for him, but he's definitely on the short list. But Greg and Evan and Rishi are also great. Like I don't feel like you go wrong with the people that I've met so far. So that's my take. Let me know in the comments what you think of Joby, and go ahead on ofthepeople.us. I also have recently added on OTP the U.S. Senate race in California. So you could unselect CA-16 and now select USCA. And this will show you Katie, Adam, Christina, Steve Garvey, Barbara Lee. I feel like I'm revealing my preferences by showing you my logged in view, but whatever. It's transparency. I've currently approval voted Katie and Adam. I think they're both strong. If I had to choose today, I might lean Adam. But Katie's great. Would love to have either of them on the show to talk one-on-one. Vaughn's like, hey, that's recency bias. It is possible. I mean, I did talk to Greg just a couple days ago. Rishi I've had on a few times, and Evan was a few weeks ago. But yeah, no one was more recent than Joby. So maybe I'll be, have a different. Well, what I like about Joby is he's young. I think we need some more young, super intellectually curious people in Congress. And right now, you have a lot of young, angry people in Congress, like Lauren Boebert, would be an example. Although I think she's a grandmother somehow. But you know what I mean? Like there's younger people there, like that dude in Florida, Matt Gaetz. He seems on the younger side. But I would love to have like some young nerds in Congress. And no offense to Joby, I say this with great affection as a nerd. I kind of get some nerd vibe from him, and that's good. It's good for people who are fascinated by ideas and by data and by interesting, complex issues and thinking about problems as puzzles. Like those are good things to have in Congress. I wish we had more of that. So if you found this conversation useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before we wrap up, I do want to thank our channel members. So let's go there, and we'll start with our biggest members. And I'm going to do something new because I got some feedback that the channel shout outs are taking a little long. But I still want to take the time to show appreciation for people who, kind of contribute to helping us cover the cost of this content and the channel. So we're going to do a readout for the senior vice president, and the hardcore level. And then I'll do a screen showing of the verified nerd. So everybody will get recognition. But we'll make it a little speedier. So our biggest supporter is Soldier One, who has been a member for 45 months. So thank you, Soldier One. Then at the VP level, you have Kristen Slevin and Bike, who is about to hit 50 months of support. So thank you, Kristen. And Bike, 39 months. So they're about to hit milestones. And then hardcore, you got Gene, David, DK, Jekkalego, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn. I think Vaughn might be in the live chat. Yang, Dean, Galessa, Jay Perrin, Dana, Jason, Daniel, Mickey, Yoda, and Unkiyu. And then now I'm just going to scroll through our verified level, which starts at $1.99 a month. And if you are thinking about joining, you just click the join link on YouTube. Costs you $1.99 a month, less than a shot of espresso, and you cancel anytime, and you're supporting like helpful policy content about politics in America. Yeah, shout out to you, Vaughn. Thank you for being a hardcore member. I will talk to you all next time. Goodbye, nerds.